do past paper. So we'll just do past paper questions related to shapes of molecules. So starting with kind of shapes, bond angles, molecular geometry, ठीक है. So this one, starting with the first one, what feature is present? They're saying what feature is present in ethene and polyethene. ठीक है, दोनों के अंदर कौन सा feature present है? So first thing is that they have bond angles of 109. So ethene is double bond and it's got one. I mean, it's got a double bond, right? That's what ethene is. Polyethene, if you don't know, you just Google polyethene. It's lots of ethenes that are connected together. So as I remember, these are not the three-dimensional shapes that I'm drawing. So this is what polyethene would look like. But anyways, what's the angle over here? It's carbon with 3 pairs of bonds. ठीक है, rounded. So क्या shape होती है if it's got 3 pairs of bonds?
Trigonal plane.
Yes, so it's going to be trigonal planar, which is this one. If you've got 3 pairs of bonds, so trigonal planar. So angle would be, I mean, the actual shape of this molecule would look like this. Okay, it's going to be fan shaped. Okay, all the bonds will repel each other, and they will have an angle of 120 degrees. So baat hi khatam ho jati hai. This is going to be 120 degrees. And when carbon makes 4 bonds, so what is the shape of 4 bonds? 4 bonds, that's this one, it's tetrahedral. So this carbon over here would actually look tetrahedral. It's going to have an angle of 109.5 degrees. But the reality, it's not going to look like this. Okay, agar main polyethene ki shape molecule shape. So there'll be lots of tetrahedral structures connected together. So this one. So it's going to look like this. Okay, carbon, all of them are tetrahedral. All of them are this one might be a better version of so it's like lots of tetrahedral structures connected together, not this one. This is how polyethene would look like in reality. So isliye pehla wala option that's wrong. A is wrong. One of them has 109, the other one does not. Acha, usko skip kar dete hain. I'm just talking about shapes right now. So the next one is the diagram shows 2 different compounds and sif shapes wale questions. Most of them. Shapes wale. Which molecule containing? That's again not shapes. This one. This one is about shapes. Ammonia molecule, ammonium ion. I'm going to draw both of them. Ammonia is, it's got 3 bonds, and it's got 1 lone pair. So that is what ammonia is. Okay, how do I know that nitrogen has 5 electrons? So there are 2 left. So this one, ammonia molecule, is pyramidal. Okay, that's what ammonia is. Ammonium is that it's got an H+1 that's sticking on top of it. So this is what ammonium looks like. Okay, there's an extra H+1 ion. So you have a pyramid tha, NH3 ka with lone pairs, but the lone pairs are bonded together. We'll study dative bonds in a while, but I'm just saying that it has 4 bonds. It doesn't have a lone pair. The lone pair gets attracted to the H+1 over here. So 4 bonds. 4 bonds ki shape kya hogi? It's going to be a regular tetrahedral shape. Option A would be the answer. Anyways, you didn't study sigma and pi bonds, so usko skip kar dete hain. Acha, other questions about shapes of molecules.
Sir, how we knew that it was pyramidal?
Acha, kaun sa pista wala? Ammonia wala? Just 1 second.
Yes.
How many bonds does it have? NH3, that's 3 bonds, right? And it's got a lone pair.
Yes.
So 3 bonds, 3 bonds and 1 lone pair. वो ये shape है ना? That 3 bonds, that's a pyramid, and the lone pair is sitting on top. So that's like a pyramid. Because top पे there's no atom attached to it, so the top will not be counted as a shape because there's nothing attached to it. Clear here? This one. Four bonds is
Yes.
tetrahedral. If you just have two bonds and two lone pairs, so the shape is, I mean, all of them have exactly the same shape except कि वो जो lone pair वाली side है ना, that's not going to be counted as a shape because there's nothing attached to it. So this shape will be just bent. तो ये सारी versions हमने की थी, ठीक है? अच्छा, then some other question. Angles का किधर है? अच्छा, sorry, bond angle वो topic ये था. Data को छोड़ देते हैं. अच्छा, ethane burns in oxygen to produce carbon dioxide and water vapors. ठीक है? What bond angles are present in the molecules of ethane and its combustion products? So ethane is, Google कर लो, ethane is 2 carbons with 6 hydrogens. अच्छा, so look at the carbon atoms. कितने bonds बना रहे हैं carbon atoms? 4. तो 4 की shape क्या होगी? But if you have 4 bonds, that's going to be tetrahedral, ठीक है? And the angle would be 109.5. Clear है? But ये जो ethane है ना, इसकी जो actual shape है, it's going to look like this. वो इसलिए मैं show कर रहा हूँ because you get used to it. So ethane molecule shape. The carbon around the carbon atom, it's going to be tetrahedral. ठीक है? It's going to be like, एक सेकंड, अच्छी version हो. अच्छा, so ये काफी है. So ethane is going to be, it's going to look like this. Okay, carbon with 3 CH3s, ठीक है? So it's like an inverted pyramid and one bond over here. So that's a tetrahedral shape around the carbon atom. Same over here, carbon with 3 bonds, that's a pyramid, and 1 bond on top of it. So that is exactly what this carbon looks like. Okay, it's going to be tetrahedral. Each one of them will be tetrahedral. And the angles would be 109.5. Combustion products, what are the combustion products? You're going to get carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide mein, carbon is making double bonds with oxygen. So carbon doesn't have a lone pair. How do I know it doesn't have a lone pair? Because carbon has, it's group 4. So that means it's got 4 valence electrons. Or because 4 valence electrons, so 2 over here, 2 over here. So there's nothing left. So shape, what is the shape of carbon dioxide? The bonds will try to be as linear. It's going to be as far away from each other as possible. So it's going to be 180 degrees. That's going to be the angle. Up here, water vapors. That's the other product. So water vapor is H2O. So O ke lone pairs कितने हैं? Oxygen is in group 6. It's got 6 valence electrons. 2 of them are bonding, so that means 4 electrons are left. तो इसका मतलब it's got 2 lone pairs and 2 bonds. So इसकी जो shape होगी, that's going to look like this one. 2 lone pairs and 2 bonds, and so it's going to be bent. It's going to be 104.5. वो lone pair की repulsion थोड़ी सी ज़्यादा होती है, so the lone pairs are going to repel, and the bonds will become closer to each other. ठीक है? So this one will be 104.5 degrees. ठीक है? This one would be 109.5 degrees. This the correct answer would be C. ठीक है? C correct होगा. अच्छा, फिर next one. In which molecule do all the carbon atoms lie in the same plane? So this one is a slightly difficult question. If you don't know what this is, just Google it. You'll 2,3-dimethyl butene. It means bute का मतलब 4 carbon atoms है, ठीक है? So you've got 4 carbon atoms. 2-ene means there's a double bond, ठीक है? Just ignore the name. I'm writing down the formula. 2,3-dimethyl. That means there's a carbon on the second one. There's a carbon on the third one. और बाकी सारे H होंगे. So there are 3 H's with this one. And there are 3 H's with this one. It's the same over here, 3 H's. अच्छा, now read the question carefully. He's not interested in the H's. वो कह रहा है कि carbon atoms. He's just talking about the carbon atoms. Do they lie in the same plane? So let's just focus on the carbon atoms. Okay, you got these carbon atoms. So remember, shape is determined by the middle carbon atoms, right? Okay, उसके साथ how are the bonds bonded to it, right? So what is the shape around this carbon atom? क्या हो गया? How many pairs of bonds do you have?
3.
So वो trigonal planar होगी, 3 pairs of bonds, right? So this one, so I'm just going to focus, I'm just going to ignore the hydrogen. So ये जो carbon है ना, it's going to be trigonal planar. The angles would be 120 degrees. So that's one carbon atom, that's another carbon atom, right? तो उसके जो दोनों carbon atoms होंगे, they will be at 120 degree angle. The other one is also exactly the same. It's 3 pairs of bonds. So that would kind of be exactly the same. So they're all planar, trigonal planar, or ये भी trigonal planar. Think of it as 2 fans that are overlapping in the middle. Okay? There's one fan, and then there's this other fan. So all of them, they would be lying completely flat. Just a fan के अंदर what happens कि all the blades of the fan are lying in the same plane, right? इसकी अगर shape मिल जाए, एक second, 2,3-dimethyl butene. इसकी definitely नहीं मिलेगी वैसे. Two, 3-dimethyl butene, just a second. नहीं, इसका मुश्किल है, लेकिन just imagine you've got all the carbon atoms will be lying exactly just the way I've drawn it on this page. They would be lying completely flat. Okay? They'll be as far away from each other as possible. No bond is coming out of the page. No bond is going into the page. हाँ, ये ends वाले जो H है ना, that's where the carbon atom will be tetrahedral. ठीक है, this one, ये जो end वाला carbon atom है, that's tetrahedral. The hydrogens will be making an angle of 109.5. So some of the bonds will be, so it's going to be like a pyramid. That will be, so some of the H atoms will be into the page. तो यहाँ से ना वो pyramid start हो जाएगा, 3-dimensional. There'll be one H that will be coming out of the page, and there'll be one H that will be going into the page. ठीक है, तो imagine करो कि the pyramids attached, 3-dimensional pyramids that are attached at the ends. क्योंकि that end is actually 3-dimensional. It's a 3-dimensional tetrahedral structure. ये वाला trigonal planar है, ठीक है? Is that clear? Is this clear?
जी sir.
Okay, yes, sir. All the carbon atoms, they lie in the same plane. Achha, then there is propane. Now we've got an issue with propane. Propane is 3 carbon atoms, and it's an alkane. ये पहला वाला हो गया. अच्छा, propane is 3 carbon atoms. और बाकी सारे H है. Now remember, he's not talking about the H atoms. ठीक है? So when carbon is making 4 bonds, that means carbon is tetrahedral, right? So that means carbon is tetrahedral. But he's only talking about the carbon atoms, not of the other atoms. Okay, are these carbon atoms lying in the same plane or not? So angle क्या है वैसे? Middle carbon atom. Remember, the middle carbon atom decides what the angle is. So the angle would be क्या होगा? 109.5, right?
Sir, what does lie in same plane mean?
कि बिल्कुल फ्लैट, जैसा फैन नहीं होता, मतलब ये कुछ शेप्स हैं which are planar. Planar का मतलब है इसको, मतलब जैसा आप सोचो कि you have a table and you put something on the table, right? And it lies completely flat. तो linear shape जो है, if I put a molecule like this on a table, तो it will be lying completely flat, right? Fan shape जो है, if I put it on a table, it's going to be lying completely flat in one plane, right? Clear है? इसको अगर मैं टेबल पे रखूंगा तो क्या होगा? It's not going to be lying flat. उसके one bond is coming out, मतलब ऊपर जा रहा होगा. तो वो टेबल के ऊपर बिल्कुल फ्लैट पड़ा हुआ नहीं होगा. Is that clear?
Yes.
ठीक है, then you have I mean this shape that's not planar, ठीक है. I mean if you हाँ इसमें ना there will be certain versions that will be planar. For example ये जो T-shaped है ना, T-shaped क्योंकि दो साइडों में lone pairs आ गए ना, this side T-shaped can be, think of a T, you can put it flat on a table, right? You can't put this one on the table flat. You can probably put ये जो linear, you can put that on the table. अच्छा इसमें भी है कि you can ये square planar, वो planar word आ गया, ठीक है. That means if you have two lone pairs, so it's just a square, it's just a cross, right? So you can put it flat on the table. ये वाला जो it's not going to be flat because one of the bonds will be coming on top of the, I mean it will be rising upwards, ठीक है, or pointing upwards. So in this case, he's asking, are these three carbon atoms, ignoring all the other hydrogen atoms? So the carbon atom pehle kya, it's 4 bonds, tetrahedral, right? So that means this carbon atom, its actual shape is going to be like this. Okay, tetrahedral mein kya hota hai? You've got 2 bonds, and then you've got 1 bond that's coming towards you, and then you've got 1 bond that's going away from you, right? Achha, ye jo carbon atom hai na, that's bonded to 2 carbon atoms. And then those 2 carbon atoms, wo jo end wale, they're tetrahedral as well. So all of them are tetrahedral, which means none of them are actually planar. Tetrahedral ka matlab it's like a pyramid, theek hai, that's acha 1 bond over here. Acha isse aage bhi tetrahedral hai, but remember he wasn't really talking about the hydrogen atoms. He was just focusing on the carbon atoms. So just focus on this part. Just the carbon atoms, ignore the rest of the molecule. I mean, is tarah ka agar shape ho, 109.5 degree angle, this thing, can you put it flat on the table? Like just pick these 3 carbon atoms. Imagine the other hydrogen atoms don't exist. And they're making an angle of 109.5. Can you put it flat on a table? मतलब इस तरह की shape बिल्कुल table पे flat आ जाएगी कि नहीं आ जाएगी?
No, sir.
क्यों नहीं आएगी? Imagine करो ना कि आपके पास, let's say you've got 2 markers, right? And they're making an angle of 109.5. तो उसको बस flat नीचे आ जाएगा ना, जमीन उस पे रख लो.
Sir, यानी hydrogen atoms को हटा करना.
हाँ, मतलब मैंने कहा क्योंकि उससे कहा he's just focusing on the carbon atoms. Are they lying in the same plane?
जी सर, फिर तो होता है.
Hydrogen के साथ तो it's obviously not planar क्योंकि this hydrogen is coming out of the board, it's coming towards you. This hydrogen is going away from you, ठीक है, वो पीछे जा रहा है पेज के. So obviously with the hydrogen atoms it's not planar. ठीक है, it's a tetrahedral shape and it's obviously not planar. लेकिन अगर खाली उससे if you just focus on the carbon atoms, so it's just these 2 bonds, right? So these 2 bonds are planar. और याद रखना 2 bonds जब भी हो ना, they would always be planar. You can always put 2 bonds, whatever the angle between them, you can always put them flat on a table, ठीक है? कि अगर मेरे पास एक molecule जो मर्जी angle है, ठीक है, this is, I can obviously put this flat on the table, right? Angle थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा हो जाता है, it doesn't really matter. I can still put it flat on the table, right? तीसरे पे मसला आता है. When you have a third bond, तो अगर तो वो third bond उसी plane में lie करे, then it's fine. But if the third bond is coming towards you, then it will not be planar, right? So 2 bonds are always planar. If you just talk about 2 bonds, they would always be lying in the same plane. अच्छा ये हो गया. और आखिरी जो है third one, that's cyclohexane. Cyclohexane is 6 carbon atoms arranged in a cyclic manner, and hexane, so that's all of them are each atoms. So this one. Now, क्या angle है around this carbon atom? What is the angle around this carbon atom?
109.5.
ठीक है, tetrahedral, right? This is tetrahedral, this is tetrahedral. All of them are making 4 bonds. ठीक है, ये बीच में एक और H है, that's also making 4 bonds, right? So the point is it's 109.5. Do you remember that? All the angles are 109.5. So is this a flat regular hexagon planar? अगर ये planar hexagon होता, do you know what the angle of a hexagon is? Like if you have a regular hexagon and let's see what the angle is. I think it's 120, right? Okay, bhi aa jayega. Regular hexagon, perfect. Yeah. Achha, so image open karna. अच्छा ठीक है. अच्छा, so regular hexagon. तो angle क्या होता है? 120 होता है, right? That is a planar hexagon. That's the hexagon that you studied in math. ठीक है? Math where this hexagon you can draw it on a page, right? There's nothing coming out of the page, nothing going into the page, right? That's a very regular planar. Planar का मतलब एक ही plane में flat hexagon, and the angles would be 120 degrees. Is that clear? तो हमारा जो hexagon है, उधर angle क्या आ रहा है? The angle over there is coming out to be 109.5 degrees, right? So how is that possible? I mean, this one looks like a hexagon as well, like the 6 carbon atoms. I mean, it appears to be a hexagon. But हमने पढ़ा कि when carbon makes 4 bonds, the angle is 109.5. Over here, they're saying that if you have a 2-dimensional planar hexagon, the angle is 120. So that means our hexagon is actually not a planar hexagon. It's a 3-dimensional hexagon. This is how it's going to look like. कि हमारा जो hexagon है ना, cyclohexane की shape. Because अगर वो flat होता ना तो angle तो 120 होना था, but it's not 120, right? So our hexagon is not a planar hexagon. It actually kind of ये वाला. So imagine ये carbon atoms है, ये जो black color, these are carbon atoms. So imagine there are 6 carbon atoms, but it's not a flat hexagon. It does look like a hexagon tetrahedral because all of them are tetrahedral, right? So they have to maintain a 109.5 degree angle. जिसकी वजह से ना plane से ना उनको या तो ऊपर जाना पड़ेगा या नीचे जाना पड़ेगा. Only then can you have a 109. अगर वो बिल्कुल flat होता ना, then the angles would have been 120. But this is not a flat hexagon. It's not a planar hexagon. It's a 3-dimensional hexagon. Is this clear? The idea clear?
जी सर.
तो बाकी को clear, मैं थोड़ा सा फिर से explain कर दूं. If you had a completely flat hexagon, so math जो आपने पढ़ी हुई है, ठीक है, that would suggest that the angle should have been 120. But then we found out that हमारा carbon, that's a tetrahedral carbon atom. That means the angle in this hexagon must be 109.5. And the only way that is possible is it's not a regular flat, वो जो math वाला hexagon. It's not like that. It's a hexagon that is 3-dimensional, where some of the bonds are going, some of the carbon atoms are below the plane, some of the carbon atoms वो ऊपर गए हैं, ठीक है, some of them are below, ताकि वो angle squeeze हो जाए, because otherwise the angle would have been 120. तो वो ऊपर नीचे करके the angle you can sort of reduce the angle. So that's why the hexagon is kind of a crooked hexagon in a 3-dimensional space. तो इससे हमें आइडिया हुआ कि it will not be a planar hexagon. ठीक है, वरना planar के अंदर it would have been 120 degrees. तो इसकी explanation या reasoning होगी, if planar is 120 degrees, I mean, it should not be 109.5. That means इस वाले में the carbon atoms don't lie in the same plane. Clear idea?
जी सर.
तो मैं फिर से go through कर रहा हूँ कि the first one was that they gave me this molecule and told me are the carbon atoms lying in the same plane. So this was fan shaped, right? I mean, this carbon was fan shaped, and this other carbon atom was also fan shaped. So it was like two fans, the carbon atoms. Just focus on the carbon atoms, not the H atoms. So the carbon atoms were fan shaped, and so two fans overlapping with each other. Fan जो fan shape होती है, that's by default planar. It's like उसके जो blades होते हैं all lying in the same plane. फिर हमने किया दूसरा वाला propane. उसके अंदर he said are the carbon atoms lying in the same plane, even though it was a three-dimensional structure where the carbon atoms were tetrahedral. All of them were tetrahedral, but उससे सिर्फ carbon का कहा था. So I just highlighted the carbon atoms. Can this shape lie in the same plane? It can obviously lie in the same plane. If you ignore the hydrogen atoms, the carbon atoms, just two bonds. इनको आप flat table के ऊपर रख सकते हो, ठीक है? Completely flat. You can put this on the table. And this one is keep your reasoning DTK. If it were planar, it would have been 120. Since it's not, that means it's three-dimensional. So this one is also not planar. The carbon atoms are not planar. Sure, next one is shapes. Okay. Okay, which one? Where are the?
With the shape, like for propane, you use two shapes. One was flat, like it was making 180-degree angle. It was like straight line. The
propane?
Carbon.
अच्छा नहीं ये वाली जो shape है.
Yes, and that.
Hey, this is not the shape. I drew the structural formula first. Okay, this is not the shape. But remember this. Similarly, this is not the shape. जब आप structural formula draw करते हैं, you don't actually draw the shape. You just draw whenever you write the formula. ठीक है, you're not actually drawing shapes. You're just showing that this carbon has 3 hydrogens connected and this carbon has 2 hydrogens connected. We don't know what the angles are. We don't know what the shape is. वो तो propane की जाके three-dimensional shape देखोगे ना, तब जाके पता लगेगा ना कि what's the shape. Like propane molecule shape is going to be 3 tetrahedral structures connected to each other. The propane molecule would be ये कर लेते हैं. The propane molecule would be like this. So हम obviously इसको I mean it's 3 tetrahedrals. Carbon वो 4 bonds बना रहा है. This carbon is also making 4 bonds tetrahedral. This one is also making 4 bonds, right? That's also tetrahedral. So obviously in normal usage we don't draw the shapes because it's obviously very difficult to actually draw the shapes. ठीक है, तो आप जब लिखते हो ना तो you just write के कौन किस साथ bonded है. You don't actually draw the shape. हाँ, उसके बाद I tried to figure out what the shape is. I said the shape would kind of look like this.
It's important to recognize that it is in line same plane or not.
नहीं, इस केस में तो question है ना कि are they lying in the same plane or not? So obviously it's important. कि you should be able to figure out which shapes are planar and which shapes are not planar. जैसे यहाँ पे ना, you should know कि I mean this one is not planar. 6 bonds not planar. You can't put it flat on a table. लेकिन ये वाली जो shape है ना, this is planar. Like if you have a cross, you can put the cross flat on the table, right? So that means that is planar, right? उसके नाम में भी planar आ जाता है. ठीक है, ये T shaped है, that is planar. T को आप बिल्कुल flat जमीन पे रख सकते हो ना, that's planar. Linear, that's planar. I mean, you can if you have a linear, you can put it straight on a flat surface, right? इस वाले को you can't put this flat on the surface, ठीक है? तो वो recognize करना important है, ठीक है? ये pyramid को you can't obviously put it flat on a table. I mean, you can't do that. Tetrahedral can't do that. इसको कर सकते हो. ये जो bent है ना, V-shaped. That can be put flat on the table. The square planar, ये जो fan है, that could also be put flat on a table. तो वो recognize करना important है because you're getting questions on that, ठीक है? So is this question clear? This was a bit difficult, but is this clear? और ये भी clear है,
Yes.
ये भी clear है कि this is not the shape. This is just me drawing the structure. I mean, whenever you draw molecules, you don't actually draw the shape. किसी भी molecule की. मतलब जब आप CH4 लिखते हो तो आप ये लिखते हो ना, you write CH4, right? That's it. तो normal usage
Sir,
में
it is not necessary that we should know the exact shape of any molecule.
नहीं,
We just it knows that how many bonds, and we know that it makes it just lie on a same plane or not. It is enough for doing a question.
नहीं, but you have to know कि वो trigonal, planar है, bent है, tetrahedral, trigonal, pyramidal. So you need to know the names of the shape. You also need to know the angles of the shape. हाँ, draw करने को नहीं आएगा. मतलब they would probably not ask you to draw the shape. I mean, it's kind of impossible for you to actually, for most students to actually draw the shape. कि अभी देखो C7H8 है ना, all of them are tetrahedral. The first carbon is tetrahedral, the second one is tetrahedral. Also, there are lots of carbons which are tetrahedral connected together. So it's no one is going to ask you to actually draw this, but they will ask you कि भाई ये shape क्या है और angle क्या है. So this carbon is tetrahedral 109.5 because it's making 4 bonds. Same with all these other carbon. This carbon is tetrahedral, it's making 4 bonds, and so तो वो draw करने को नहीं आएगा, but you have to know the angles, you have to know the shape, and you have to identify the shape as well. ठीक है, clear है? तो यहाँ पे भी ना cyclohexane जो था, I mean obviously you can't draw this, but you should have an idea that what would it look like. इसलिए मैं बार-बार ना I'm actually showing you the molecule as well, so that you get used to it, because no one is going to ask you to draw this, but if you have a sense of what the molecule would look like or appear like in reality, तो वो थोड़ा आसान हो जाएगा. ठीक है, clear है Zabiba? Is this clear?
Yes.
अच्छा, अगला वाला, which one he's saying in which are all the 3 atoms in a straight line? First one is polyethene, right? Are they in a straight line? Polyethene is CH2s, ढेर सारे. CH2 straight line. Angle क्या होता है straight line? That's 180 degrees, right? तो मुझे बताओ कि the carbon atoms are making 4 bonds. So what is the angle?
109.5.
तो इसका मतलब है इधर तो मैंने I've drawn it a straight line, but the actual shape is not going to be a straight line. ठीक है, it's going to be tetrahedral. ठीक है, वो actually इस तरह था, ये वाली shape होगी, CH2 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 CH2. So there'll be lots of tetrahedrals connected together. तो इस तरह करके 3-dimensional shapes आ रही होंगी. So this is so this one is definitely not a straight line. What about C3H8? Same issue. जो अगला वाला है C3H8, that's 3 carbon atoms. So again, I'm not drawing the shape, but every carbon atom is tetrahedral. So that means the angle is 109.5 degrees. So straight line में 180 degrees होने चाहिए. ठीक है. So again, that's, तो पहला भी गलत है, दूसरा भी गलत है. SiCl4 is 4 bonds. 4 bonds is by default tetrahedral again. So no angle is 180 degrees. They're all 109.5. आखिरी रह गया D, SF6, 6 bonds, right? And no lone pairs, because sulfur, how do I know it doesn't have a lone pair? Sulfur is in group 6. So if it's in group 6, so that would mean, okay, if it's in group 6, that would mean 6 bonds. So it's all 6 electrons getting used up. Sulfur would kind of look like this. It's fluorine. 6 bonds का क्या होता है? It's एक ऊपर, एक नीचे, एक right, left, one on the back side, one on the front side. Right? So, I mean, this is what SF6 would look like, 6 bonds. If you have 6 bonds, it's going to look like this. And since it's going to look like this, all angles will be, they'll be in a straight line. एक ऊपर, एक नीचे. So all 3 atoms in a straight line. एक x-axis with दूसरी side पे, one on the other side, that's straight line, right? So the angle, so this is fine, SF6 is fine. अच्छा, फिर next is के smallest bond angle. So BH3, starting with BH3. BH3 has just 3 bonds. How do I know it just has 3 bonds and no lone pairs? Because it's in group 3. So उसके पास, it's got 3 electrons only. So all 3 electrons getting used up. So 3 का क्या होगा? It's planar, right? It's going to have an angle of 120 degrees. What about CH4? CH4 will be a tetrahedral. So it's going to be carbon. And 109.5. It's going to be 3-dimensional. It's 1 bond towards you, 1 bond away from you. ठीक है? So the angle is 109.5. What about C2H6? Again, it's 2 tetrahedrals. ठीक है? I mean, the carbons are The first one is 109.5. The other one is also 4 bonds. So that's also. So all of them are 109.5. NH3 रह गया. NH3 is going to be N. And it is going to have a lone pair. क्योंकि 5 electrons होते हैं ना, so it's making 3 bonds, so that means 2 electrons are left. So what is the angle in NH3? That's 107 degrees. 1 lone pair, 3 bonds. Okay, just look at the shape. 1 lone pair, 3 bonds. This one, 3 bonds, 1 lone pair. It's going to look like this, and the angle will be 107 degrees. And so this appears to be the smallest. So ye wala jo na, that's the smallest. Okay, D is going to be my answer for this one. Achha, next one is इसको skip कर लेते हैं. अच्छा, यहाँ पे फिर से smallest bond angle N, 3 bonds, right? But remember, N has lone pairs, right? Achha, remember, this is not the shape of the molecule. Okay, just remember that this is not the shape of the molecule. Achha, N has a lone pair, 3 bonds. So what is the shape? That's a trigonal pyramidal, and the angle will be 107 degrees. What about this one? Carbon making 4 bonds. That's tetrahedral, and the angle will be 109.5 degrees. What is this one? Carbon making 3 pairs of bonds, right? So the angle will be 120 degrees. So smallest cons are that's X, Y, and Z. So the answer will be A. Okay, so carbon making 4 bonds, 109.5. Carbon making 3 pairs of bonds, that's 120. And carbon nitrogen making 3 bonds, plus it's got a lone pair. Okay, you have to look out for lone pairs. Then they're not going to tell you whether some atom has a lone pair or not. वो आपने खुद ही estimate करना है by looking at its valence shell electrons के. अगर तो 3 bonds हैं तो 2 बच गए. ठीक है, ये clear है ये question?
जी सर.
Yes, sir.
अच्छा, ये वाला कि अच्छा, इधर ना it's making 4 bonds, but this one is NH3 with lone pairs, right? वो NH4 में ना, ठीक है, again I'm just drawing it for you. We haven't discussed dative bonds. वो जो lone pair है ना, it ends up forming, so it's making 4 bonds. So 4 bonds where the angle is 109.5 degrees, and if you have a lone pair exerts a greater repulsion to 107 degrees. So there's a decrease in bond angle happening in the next one as well. C2H4, that's C2H4 is tetrahedral, it's 109.5. Sorry, C2H4 is not tetrahedral. C2H4 में double bond होता है. तो अच्छा, C2 H4, that's fan shape, that's 120 degrees, right? And then it forms C2H6, that's tetrahedral, that's so tetra carbon 4 bonds, that's 109.5 degrees. So there is a decrease in bond angle in both of them. Okay, which molecule contains 6 bonding electrons? That's I guess it's SF6. 6 bonds बना रहा है. Sorry, 6 bonding electrons. So that means not bonding pair of electrons, 6 bonding electrons. So it's going to be NCl3 then. 6 bonding electrons means 3 bonds, right? Because in one bond there are 2 electrons. Achha, ammonia is a colorless. इसको भी छोड़ देते हैं. Achha, he's asking what is the shape around the N atom? So the question is, does the N have a lone pair? It's making 3 bonds, so that means it's got a lone pair as well. मतलब 5 electrons होते हैं, group 5, it's got 5 electrons, so there are 2 electrons that are left. So what would be the shape? It's going to be 120, it's going to be C. Why C? कितने pairs of bonds, and that's 2 bond pairs. two bond pairs. You got a double bond, you got a single bond. One pair over here, one pair over here. And you got one lone pair. तो उसमें जाके देखो कि two bond pairs plus one lone pair. Yeah, you got three things repelling each other. So what would be the angle if you've got three things? That's going to be 120 degrees. It's this one. इसी की एक version है. If you've got one lone pair and two pairs of bonds. So it's going to be fan shaped, but except that one side of the fan is missing. So you're going to call it bent. Or जो angle होगा ना, that's going to be approximately 120 or slightly less than 120. इधर खैर उसने
ये वर्कशीट देखें।
हाँ
सर वो जब ये दिखा रहे थे जिसमें वो शेप्स दिए हुए हैं सर वो भेज देंगे।
हाँ ये वाला ये मैंने भेजे ना उस पे व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप पे।
ओके
चलो ठीक है, नेक्स्ट टाइम थोड़े और क्वेश्चंस कर लेंगे शेप्स के, ठीक है?
सर
हाँ जी
सर कैन यू जस्ट मार्क द क्वेश्चन जिसमें शेप्स वगैरह हैं पूछे में, ताकि इफ वी आर प्रैक्टिसिंग बाय आवरसेल्फ तो
नहीं वो ये है ना, ये जो शीट मैंने भेजी हुई है ना पहली वर्कशीट, अभी दूसरी भी भेजी हुई है, उसके बाद फर्स्ट पे जाओ तो दिस बॉन्ड एंगल्स मॉलिक्यूलर ज्योमेट्री, वो पेज 73 है। उसके बाद बस वो क्वेश्चंस देख लेना कि वो ऑब्वियस होगा कि वेयर इज आस्किंग फॉर द एंगल्स एंड द शेप, ठीक है?
ओके सर
चलो ठीक है, ओके एवरीवन, हाफिज।
अल्लाह हाफिज़।